Thank you.
Tell us
Thank you
what
very
actually,
much.
yeah, tell us what the trio can learn from Western Balkans.
Yes. No, first of all, thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for the paper or the document that you've prepared. It really goes into some important details and sketches some important steps forward. I was thinking to have it a little bit different, my presentation, but hearing from previous speakers, I will change it a little bit and start from the point of civil society. Like, yes, interest of all entire civil or most of the civil society in all our 9 countries is for our countries to join the European Union. But the question is, how do we join the EU? Are we reformed, transformed? Are our countries liberal? Are our institutions fit, etc.? And where is the limit of what is possible through the process, and where at some point we really need to say, we can't become perfect societies, we can't become, these models of how liberal democracies in Europe should look like. We need to also be allowed to join, even if we continue to have some flaws. And I think civil society in the Western Balkans, but I can see it happening elsewhere as well, will struggle between these, these lines of where you argue for EU membership, where you criticize EU because you want your country to improve much better, and where is the point where you say, and now this needs to stop. And in that sense, I think it makes sense to argue for example, ESI argues very strongly for inclusion of all countries into the single market, or to argue for inclusion in the European Parliament as sketched out, or in the Council, or in the working documents. But the question really is who and at what point gets to be part of all of this. I'll give you one recent example. That is, EU or the Council has decided to debrief Western Balkan countries on the results of the Foreign Affairs Council meetings. So when the foreign ministers meet, they discuss different issues from Ukraine to, to Sahel. And then afterwards, diplomats from the country, from 6 Western Balkan countries are invited to be debriefed of what happened at the Foreign Affairs Council. And then you think, do really all 6 deserve to be debriefed? Do all 6 really deserve to be engaged or involved into the work, if we know that Serbia is failing to align on foreign policy when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, when we know that Bosnia and Herzegovina does align but doesn't implement any of the sanctions practically, or doesn't make any practical steps on it? And is there, are they really all the same on these issues? And and in the end, what does this debriefing mean if the Council will do it with in the hindsight that, Serbia or Bosnia and Herzegovina might leak all the information to Russians or to whoever not? And does it then lose the the point, because then what will be shared is the same what is shared in media, and then what is the point of the exercise that it is? So on this small example, I want to say, yes, we need to fight for our countries to get good offers, to get as integrated as possible, as politically possible in the EU, but we need to make sure that that happens on the basis of countries really delivering something, not becoming model countries and model member states, but really delivering something concrete and something that we as civil society consider as useful. So in that sense, our proposal to have this Western Balkans and trio joining single market that you've happily taken over, or even before I joined you, you had it as your proposal, is something that cannot happen without countries aligning when it comes to the EU acquis, EU standards, without having rule of law institutions that are going to make sure that the single market rules are observed, without having monitoring institutions, from statistics to phytosanitary rules, which are, fully aligned with the EU. And that kind of goal, that kind of offer then makes sense, because first of all, politically in the EU 27, it might be possible because it's not enlarging institutions in Brussels and having it more complicated, but at the same time it offers concrete, it offers a path to do something which is beneficial for the countries, which is something that civil society can support, and at the same time it comes with an award for citizens and for the economies, that they're treated like as if they were EU citizens. So I think in that sense we really need to be, and I'm aware that there might be different opinions and that the red lines might be here or there, and that is perfectly normal. But I think we need to be aware of that. And I think there is one lesson of the Western Balkans. For me, the worst nightmare would be to have Trio and Western Balkans in some kind of a group where everyone will be then treated the same, in a sense of, you all have to create common regional markets, or these things that we see in the Western Balkans, because in fact, not all six are the same. We have 3 NATO members in the Western Balkans, North Macedonia, Albania, and Montenegro. We have them fully aligned on the foreign policy. We have, Montenegro opened all chapters, but 10 years after accession talks have started, it still doesn't have a clear date when it might join the EU, or when the process might go towards its end. So we are not the same, but there are points where we can cooperate, and I think these kind of platforms and these kind of exchanges do make sense. So on your proposals and on your things, you've asked me to discuss this inclusion of the Trio in these regional organizations, and I've stressed it out because I've heard it in Brussels, in different capitals, discussions on potentially doing it. I think we need to be aware, what these institutions are. Do we want everyone to be in there, or it's going to be, as one of my predecessors mentioned, or it's going to be actually, a problem, not just for the Western Balkans, but also for the Trio to be involved in some of these organizations. And, if we think about the Regional Youth Cooperation Office and exchanges of young people, to what extent then this idea that these post-war countries in the Western Balkans are engaged in this, at what point, if you include 3 other countries which have a different historical context, at what point does that then lose the main point that it had at the beginning? So I think we need to be careful on that. Another thing where we need to be careful is that we are played against each other, and that was also my big fear in February, March, because as with my think tank, I've been in contact with a lot of NGO sector in Ukraine. And I have to say, for Ukrainians, for all the right reasons, we don't want to be treated like in the same group with Serbia. We don't want to be in the same group with Bosnia and Herzegovina, because these countries have their own issues, have their own problems. We are different. On the other hand, among the Western Balkans, the issue was, we've been in this process for 20 years. We want a closure for us. We don't want, new countries. And I think that can be very easily exploited by, both our friends and our foes. And that's why these kind of platforms are really key, because we get to meet each other and we get to talk to each other, and we get to, dismantle some of these fears. Also, I think on the content wise, it's important that we cooperate, because sometimes we go with some ideas to the Commission about the Western Balkans, and they say, oh, we tried it with the Ukraine, Moldova, it didn't work, and the vice versa. Sometimes from Ukraine, they go and say, we want this, we think it would be good, it would be beneficial, but then they say, oh, we tried it with Western Balkans, it doesn't work. And a couple of times, I've really noticed, not since February, but before February, is that actually it wasn't true. It's just that the Commission either didn't have resources or didn't have interest to, engage with the countries. So to kind of conclude and then open to a discussion, because I think that might be more interesting, I think your paper is good because it has a big story behind it. We want concrete offer for these countries. We want for them the same. I would stress, yes, but only if they reform, if they do things. There is no must to treat these 9 countries as part of a group. There is no must saying, Ukraine needs to wait until Bosnia and Herzegovina gets its things sorted out. No, the offer needs to be for all 9, but then those that do things can and should enjoy in the benefits that they can win, or that they can fight for. So there is a big story to it. There is a platform that you want to create. I think this one on the civil society is, for me, the most important. I think at the political level, it's also the question whether, ministers would want to meet at what point, because of this issue that, Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina are have policies that they have, and which I'm not happy about, but they are as they are. So there might be problems and things like that. And I think also what would be good is to argue for as soon as possible for the European Commission to publish its analytical report on the trio. This is these 33 chapters where they really stand and the grades that the European Commission gives on that, because I think that would express a lot of prejudice in the Balkans about Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, and vice versa, because then we would be able to compare all the 9 countries, including also Turkey, because there is that kind of report for Turkey, on these 33 chapters on the rule of law, where they stand. And I think we would be surprised that some of the, trio countries are doing significantly or much better than some of the Western Balkans. And then on the basis of this comparable results, we could then argue, for what needs to happen next. In the Western Balkans, for example, North Macedonia and Montenegro are actually front runners when it comes to the alignment with the EU, but some other countries are front runners because of the political decision by the EU at the time to push the accession process with them, despite not being aligned as much as they should be. Or, for example, Kosovo is actually better prepared for EU membership at the moment than Bosnia and Herzegovina on 33 chapters, but Kosovo, just applied for EU membership for its own specific reasons. So it helps, build the arguments for a lot of things that you've put in this paper, and that can be very useful and helpful. So that would be for me, but happy to discuss in the question and answer.